It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's Throwback Thursday and it's the short edition of ZiFM Sport. My name is Mike Madoda and joining me is the team, Chris Midzi, Barry Manandi, our producer Sean Tafirinyika, and our man on social media. We call him the Spaniard, Tatenda Ziambi. So if you ever hear this guy who's talking over the Spanish in some of the interviews that we give you, it is our multilingual social media expert, Tatenda Ziambe. Always good to have him on the show, fiddling away in the background as we talk sport. It's a good evening, Zimbabwe, and of course, this coming on a day after a terrible evening for our Warriors out in Cameroon, the first nation to book their tickets back home after an ignominious exit, losing 3-1 to Burkina Faso. That's the match we're picking apart.
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference. Z.
The lion roars. The warrior beats his drum. Battle lines are drawn in the jungles of Cameroon. It's your Chan 2021 report on ZiFM Sport.
Don't forget, we're on social media at ZiFM Sport, where you can interact with the show direct or even us in our individual capacities. Let's talk sport, let's talk football, let's talk the Warriors. Let's hear your thoughts on their exit out of Chan 2021, where, like I said earlier, Zimbabwe becoming the first team to crash out of the Chan tournament after being beaten by Burkina Faso in that Group A match at the Amadou Ahidjo Stadium in Yaoundé last night. Zdravko Logarušic's men have no point from their opening two matches, whilst Burkina Faso have 3, and trail the other group members, Cameroon and Mali, who are both tied at 4 points after drawing 1-1 in their match earlier in the day. Barry Manali, I want to start with you. Your thoughts on that performance, which many have labeled abject.
Certainly abject. Look, we can go to so many poor performances in the game. I think Simba Chinani didn't cover himself in glory, but in truth, that all of the changes that were made by the coaching staff, my goodness, this game was abject because of, I think, many of the decisions made by the technical team, and we could have done so much better in this tournament.
Chris, Barry talks about so many changes that were made to that starting lineup that we saw in the opening game, and I'm just going to give the Warriors starting 11 in this game versus Burkina Faso. For those that don't know, Simbarashe Chinani, he replaced Ario Simanda in goal. Ian Nekati captained the side. Peter Mudua was in the side together with Carlos Mavurume in defense. You had Talent Chamboko as the left back, and of course in midfield, Patson Jauro, the Dynamo skipper, was there, as was Tatenda Tavengwa of Harare City, Shadrack Nyahwa of Bulawayo City, and then we had the attackers King Nadolo as well as Farao Matar. He made, 5 or 6 changes?
Six changes.
You know what? Is that brave or was that naive?
Extremely naive. I think if you take a look at our first performance, in as much as we didn't necessarily play our best in that match, you could see that this was a starting lineup that he could have worked with. I think making that many changes into the next game, and already coming off the back of the first game where you could tell these players didn't necessarily know each other, they weren't used to playing with each other, I think going into the next match, you want as much consistency as possible in terms of the players even just being comfortable with each other. He makes these changes, but it's almost looking typical of Logaricic if we trace it back to when he was having trials of sorts, where it almost looked like Survivor and there was chopping and changing every other day in camp. So it's almost like his style, and in this situation, it didn't work at all because some of the players who should have started didn't necessarily do so.
Well, Yusuf Soso gave the Burkinabes a 14th minute lead, which was then cancelled out by Patson Jaure 10 minutes later. But second half goals by Clavet Tienre Biogo in the 53rd minute and substitute Isiaka Quadrogo in the 67th minute. So the Stallions beat Zimbabwe for the first time in a competitive match at the 5th attempt. And Barry, there goes those stats that you were talking about on yesterday's show. Yeah. And we were saying that, you know what, would they give the Warriors any confidence? The fact that they've got a good record against Burkina Faso, it counted for nothing. Now, you know, I've just been through social media, Barry, just trying to gauge the mood, the sentiment of fans. A lot of people, okay, yes, will point out the tactical shortcomings of Logaricic, but there's also a significant amount of people who were talking about the preparations, who are talking about the fact that, listen, our preparations weren't the best. So who takes responsibility? Is it the association? Is it the technical department, or do we blame COVID for everything? What exactly happened? Could the association have done anything better in this case?
Yes, the association could have done a lot better. To answer your first question, who do we blame? I think we blame everyone who you have mentioned. And the fourth party is the players, because I don't think they took responsibility for what they needed to do. They were getting some basics wrong, both in the first and in this game. And as a result of that collective, the four parties that you have mentioned, they've all conspired to put together a shambolic tournament, which didn't need to be. And I say it didn't need to be. Yes, hindsight is a perfect sign. But you look at the teams that we played. Was that Cameroon side swashbuckling, brilliant, fantastic? No, I don't think so. Was the Burkinabe side that we saw last night great? I don't think so. So there was an opportunity for us to actually better our last great showing in this competition, which was a fourth place finish. But we didn't set ourselves up to do that. And each of those parties have a role to play in this failure.
Chris, Barry's talking about Cameroon wasn't too flash. This Burkinabe side isn't too great. Listen, isn't that something that we are guilty of as Zimbabweans, where sometimes maybe we overestimate our ability and our talent, because we every side that beats us is not too great.
I wouldn't say that they weren't too great. So I differ with Barry a little bit there. What I would say is that these teams come to play and they play better than us in some of these matches, especially these last two. So you have a situation where this is a team we can beat. There is capacity and opportunity for us to beat these teams. But when it comes to actually the on-field, our tactics, our players, getting everything you need together to win a match, we never pull it completely together. And the expectation comes from the fact that it's not that our players are unable, it's not that our entire coaching staff is unable, is that we don't pull everything that we need together to win a match, and other teams do.
But I'll say, Barry, the results are an indicator that we can't beat these sides. So we can say whatever we want and come up with whatever excuses we want to come up with. But ultimately, sport is a results-based thing. The results are what are the indicator of how good you are. And our results are not good enough. So it's not what we think of ourselves as a nation. Because we always talk about, we are better than South Africa. Yet South Africa has won AFCON. South Africa has been to the World Cup, if not a couple of World Cups. We always say, we are better than Zambia. Zambia has won AFCON. Zambia has been to an AFCON final as well. We always talk about, we are better than Angola. Angola has been to the World Cup. So what is it? Is it that we have expectations, unrealistic expectations, and we are really sometimes unrealistic about where exactly we are as a footballing nation?
Well, I think when we're talking about being better than your Zambias and your South Africas, your Angolas of this world, even as far as saying that we're better than Mozambique, I think that's more hope than expectation. But when I say that we were good enough or had players good enough to come out with a result against this Cameroon side, come out with a result against this Burkina Faso side. What I'm saying is that I'm looking at the play on the field. I'm looking at what we've done and how we've set ourselves up in that particular game. And in truth, we've got things wrong. Were I in any way in the technical setup with the technical director or whatever at ZiFM, I'd be asking Logarisic some hard questions because he's got a team that he's
I want you to expand on that, Barry. You have now brought the conversation down to, okay, you think that we were tactically inept. We got a few things wrong as far as our tactics were concerned. Okay, let's talk about those things. What are the things that you feel that, you know what, Logarisic got wrong, where we feel like, okay, maybe he's the one who let the team down?
Yeah, and look, I'm going to come out straight away and say that I feel that he let the side down on the basis that, number one, you don't make 6 changes in a tournament where you're playing 3 games, 3 group games. You're not setting yourself up to win. Because what you're doing is now you're making it one of those grade 1 exercises where everyone is a winner and everyone must get a game. It's not that type of tournament. We're out here to achieve certain goals, certain objectives, and therefore you've got to have your best 11. Going into the tournament, you've got to have your best 11. If we are to assume that your best 11 was the one that ran out in the first game, you don't make 6 changes to a team that only lost 1-0 and lost 1-0 as a result of a mistake.
So is this not an indicator that he didn't know his best 11? Because for him to have a team that started the opening game versus Cameroon and then to make 6 changes in the next game, removing some players that actually had a decent showing in the first game and replacing them with others, shows you that he had no idea about who's who in the zoo.
Absolutely, and 110% that is the situation on the ground. Because you look, okay, let's start with the goalkeeping. Ariel Sibanda had a fantastic game against Cameroon. He kept them out, and you quite rightly pointed out that Ariel Sibanda actually made the scoreline look respectable. What is the reward for Ariel Sibanda getting pulled out for a man who looked like a clown in a purple outfit, Simba Chinani, last night, who did not have his best game at all? He was a bundle of nerves, he was panicky, and as a result, it filters through the team. That's just an example. So I think Logarisic on the selection side got it wrong. On the tactics side as well. Look, we can't even talk about the tactics. If you ask me what the tactics were last night, I can't, for the life of me, tell you, because the team didn't look like they wanted to do anything.
Now, Chris, it goes back to the conversation we had, I think maybe a couple of days ago, where we asked the question, do these guys go into tournaments with any briefs? Was there any set target for Logarisic and his team? Or was the victory for our nation, was the glory for our nation mere participation at Chan 2021? Because the approach here, because it's so haphazard, the selection is just so haphazard, everything is so haphazard, it just makes you think that, listen, these guys were just eager to go and participate, fulfill those 3 fixtures in the group stage and come back home.
I think we're just, in terms of the targets that are set for our national team sometimes, I think it's just that participate, go out and play. It almost sounds like that's the discussion that happens.
Yes, play well, do the nation proud.
Exactly, that's the instruction, not we would like to reach the quarterfinals or we'd like to reach the semifinals. I don't think that's the discussion that's going on, because in that case, you wouldn't have a coach who doesn't have a spine in his team. He doesn't know the basics. And it also just brings into question for me, okay, so for him and the coaching staff, they don't have targets, but also what is his relationship like with his assistants? In as much as, yes, Loga's new, we don't expect him to necessarily know his players to maybe have those crazy targets, but Loga's got assistants. These assistants know the players. So what is that relationship like between Loga and his assistants?
I am feeding off that very point. I think that's part of the problem, because in truth, when you see the 6 changes that took place last night, we get inclined to think to ourselves that because there's no way that you change in a team of 11. You're changing more than 50% of the team that got a 1-0 result against Cameroon. What is going on in the background? So for me, I think the dynamic between Loga and his assistants is not good, especially for me in the goalkeeping department, because Ariel Subana did nothing wrong that would cause him to be benched in the very next game for Simba Chinani, who did not cover himself in glory at all. Ariel Subana was full of confidence, would have left that Cameroon game thinking to himself, yes, I deserve to be here. Yes, I can do this thing. And let me tell you, in the next game on Sunday, you're going to see Nelson Maoko Chajga is going to be in goal because he wants to give everybody a chance.
Yeah, it really is worrying for the Warriors, and of course, just difficult to tell whether we are coming or going as a nation, especially as far as our participation at these international tournaments is concerned. Now, Barry, I just want us to talk about Chris. In fact, I want to hear your thoughts. Denver Mukamba is selected, and I also want to hear from Barry about Denver Mukamba as well. Chris, here's a guy who has rehabilitated himself. Here's a guy who, to be honest, is our most creative player in that entire squad. And yet he's just had 20 minutes of football off the bench. You go into a must-win game versus a Burkina Faso side that also needed to win, and which wasn't really a great side, to be honest, judging from their first performance versus Mali. And you leave your best player, arguably your best player, arguably your most incisive, creative player on the bench.
It's worrying, it's incredibly concerning, and especially for a player, I think for Denver Mukamba, like you said, he's rehabilitated himself. He's getting other chances. He wants to do well. That's a player who's hungry. This player is already hungry and he's going to prove himself. Like you said, he's a creative player. And those are some of the pieces you need if your backs are against the wall. And Loga making that decision to just, in all of these 2 games, give him all of 20 minutes is a little bit concerning, because here is a player who you absolutely need, but you're not necessarily giving them the game time to get the result that the team needs. So again, it goes back to, does Loga know his players? And clearly he doesn't. His assistants know the players. So what's going on there?
The old football adage, Mikey, is that, and it's local football parlance. I'm going to number 10, I look at about bench. You give him the number 10 shirt, you play him. You make sure that he is the guy who's gonna carry the team. And I think Denver Mukamba, where he is now, and we saw it in those friendlies in December. I actually tweeted last night that in those friendlies, we saw that Denver Mukamba is still box office. If we were to select 11 soccer stars, even outside of football today, Denver Mukamba would be one of those because of what he's done at Chapungu and already what he's shown in the colors of the Warriors in those friendly matches. So Denver Mukamba is capable and able to carry the team. Did we have anyone on the field who was carrying the team last night? No, we didn't. Did we need one? Sorely. And for Loga to make the decision to say, I'm going to hold Denver Mukamba back, I don't know what he's holding him back for. Maybe Bachara Gemri that matters more than the one we saw last night, but I don't see it.
Yeah, well, messages are coming in on Twitter, guys. Lots and lots of guys with at least their opinions on what happened. This is Hope Ngara. Good evening to you. You say the gaffer seems beyond his depth. Pakatanga Pachinzi Juju, now COVID. What next? Zim game needs to be revamped, beginning youth level. But this is a conversation we have all the time, isn't it, Chris? It's almost like a broken record where we fail and we say the same things and nothing changes.
And nothing changes because our decision makers are happy with where we are. I'm not sure what it's going to take for us to finally realize that there are simple tweaks that we need to make if we're going to go back to when Zimbabwe was a proper football league nation.
Well, let's start, Chris, with the issue of football. And I think that's a key component because we're the only team that went to Chan without a kick of football in the whole of 2020. We were hoping more than expecting us to do well. It wasn't going to be right. We need to bring football back.
We need to bring football back, but again, I totally understand that, Barry, that is certainly something that can be used in mitigation. But again, let's take a look at Namibia. They've got no league. They haven't had a kick of football. but yet they play with structure, with organization, and they play with tactical awareness. And you can tell that, you know what, they are very well organized. We didn't have that, okay? Because I would have understood if we had played well for 60, 65 minutes, and then the boys faded badly and would say, you know what, they're not really up to it, because they haven't been playing competitive football for a long time. And yet would have seen the structure and the organization in the first half and in the early part of the second half. We didn't see that, Chris. The organization is not there.
It's not there. We've got nothing at the moment, and it's we're going to have the discussions over and over until, I'm not sure until when, to be honest, but something needs to happen. It needs to change.
Something needs to change. Barry, what do you think is that thing that needs to change? If you had have done things differently heading into this tournament, Barry, as we wrap up the show, give me maybe 3 things that you feel that the association, the technical department headed by Logarisic could have done differently.
First and foremost, you're going to a tournament. That means that you need to plan. You need to have your objective, set your objectives. Secondly, execute a strategy. So if Loga wanted to have a look at teams in Zimbabwe, that should have been done in November. December was reserved for a match preparation, training, getting the guys up to speed. The fact that this team didn't have a strength and conditioning coach to prepare them, even though they hadn't had any kick-off football, means that we weren't preparing for that. And then thirdly, we need to be serious, guys. We need to be serious about football. What am I talking about? If a team goes to a tournament and does this, we should see heads roll. There should be consequences for this happening.
There should be consequences for this happening. I guess it's all eyes on 53 Livingston Avenue to see if there'll be anything at all that will happen after the Chan tournament, at least after Zimbabwe returns from Cameroon. It is ZiFM Sport. It's the short edition. We do this every Thursday, short, sharp, and sweet. And it's a pity we have to wrap it up and leave it right here.